All right. Today is Dashami. It's the 10th day of the lunar cycle. You've got 15 days in a lunar cycle. And so you start on Amavas, which is a dark moon night, which roughly corresponds to your birthday a week and a half ago. It was on a dark moon night. That's why the stars were so visible. And then the moon gets bigger. It gets bigger by a kala. Like one part of the moon gets bigger. The word kala is also used for the various incarnations of Krishna. They're kalas of Krishna, but the original usage of kala is in reference in the Rig Veda to the lunar cycle and how the moon gets bigger every day. And so the moon gets bigger for 15 days. And then you have Purnima. So in 5 days from now, it'll be Purnima. It'll be a full moon day. And then it shrinks, and it gets smaller by one kala, one little fragment, and then you end up with a dark moon night again. And that gives you a lunar month, which is 30 days. And you end up with a 360-day year instead of a 364 and a quarter day year, which is what we have. We say 365, but it's real, or maybe it's 365 and a quarter. Maybe it's 365 and a quarter is what it is. 365 and a quarter. And so then every 4 years we have a 29th day in February, and that makes up that extra quarter day. Because the Gregorian calendar, which replaced the Julian calendar, accounted for this. And so it gave us an extra leap year. There were some other mistakes that were made also. This happened around the 1500s. The Pope, Gregory, commissioned it. And then that actually doesn't fix it either, because it's not exactly 365 and a quarter. It's just a little less. And so every 100 years, like 2000, none of us will see 2100. But every 4 years, but on the 100 year, at the turn of the century, then you don't have 29 days in February. You only have 28 days. So every 4 years you have 29 days, except for on the 100 year, on this double aught, and then it's still 28 days. And that accounts for another discrepancy, which over the course of hundreds and thousands of years would throw us off by days, just like the Julian calendar. The Orthodox Church, the church I was raised in, the Orthodox Christian Church, doesn't accept the Gregorian calendar because the Pope came up with it. And so they still follow the Julian calendar, which was established, I think it was Julius Caesar who actually established it. That's why it's called the Julian calendar. I'd have to wiki it because I can't know anything for sure unless I double check on a wiki. But that one was around for a good 1,500 years, but it threw the dates off. And so, Serbian New Year is celebrated on like the 10th or 11th of January. So I used to celebrate Serbian New Year with my family, but it was always at a later date because it had been thrown off by the centuries. Because that's what happened when you have an imperfect calendar. So they had to make this double adjustment with the Gregorian calendar. They used to make money bread. You guys know what money bread is? How do you know what money bread is?
My grandmother used to make it. Great-grandmother.
Where's your family from?
Scotland, Ireland.
Huh. I didn't know that was a tradition up there. Money bread is you bake bread and you put coins in the bread. So when you get a piece of bread, there's coins in it. It's super gross. Because the you see all around the coin, it's like all green. Maybe if they put the coins in like a bottle of Coca-Cola and let the acid dissolve all the scum on the coins for a day, and they were perfectly clean coins, it might work, but it wasn't like that. I think my mom would just go to her purse and grab some change and throw it in there. Money bread. From a time when some extra coins was a big deal, put a little money in the bread actually made people's day. Used to be when I was a kid growing up, you could make a phone call for a dime. For like a half an hour, 45 minutes. I remember when it went up to a quarter. Used to be a candy bar used to cost a quarter. What's a candy bar cost nowadays? Huh? $1? $1.50. It's 25 cents when I was a kid. Any candy bar on the market, it's 25 cents. I'm going to start doing one of those when I was a kid. Anyway, it's Dashami. And so, Dashami, and anyway, you guys will see. This wasn't just all me waxing eloquent, fondly nostalgizing my childhood. You'll see. This is a Vijay Dashami. And so, generally speaking, for Hare Krishna people, we call this festival Ram Vijayotsav. And it's a commemoration of the day that Ram killed Ravan. So that's supposed to have happened today, that Ram killed Ravan. And you find, even like in old texts like the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this festival was celebrated by the Vaishnava community. So it's obviously been around for some time. I don't know how far back it goes. I just know in our, 16th, 17th century Chaitanya Charitamrita, the 16th century, the festival was celebrated. It must have been celebrated for centuries before that. Ram Vijayotsav. And so what's commonly done is they make effigies of Ravan, like a demon, and then you burn it. And then we get a little fancy in the Hare Krishna movement. We'll get bows and arrows, and we'll shoot flaming arrows at the sculpture of Ravan. I went to San Diego and they let me shoot the arrow, the flaming arrow. I was like, this is like the greatest thing ever. So I got to shoot the arrow. This is maybe 15, 20 years ago, something like that. And so, and it was interesting then when Ravan was burning, one of the leaders there in San Diego, he said, write down on a piece of paper something you're struggling with and throw it into the fire, which is like a total new age kind of self-help type deal that I've seen in many places elsewhere. Probably in Target they do it, right? It's like if you go to any kind of serious... Is that Ash? You're looking svelte, dude. Good man. Yeah, it's kind of a new agey type thing. I've seen it like, if you go to like a corporate team building type thing, they'll have you do stuff like that. So this devotee got on that train and had us do that. I thought it was nice. I actually liked it. I think I've done it with you guys, right? No? I thought about doing that. I couldn't quite bring myself to fully embrace. I'm a little too old. It's hard for teaching old dog new tricks. So yeah, that's pretty standard in North India. Thing is, India is not just North India. And so this whole Ram Vijayotsav thing is just our clique. There's a whole nother thing going on in East India. None of you are from East India. But if you go to like Odisha or Bengal, or you go to like Assam, like that whole Bangladesh, that whole thing, then it's not Ram Vijayotsav. It's Vijay Dashami, and they're worshipping Durga, who killed Mahishasur on this day. Mahisha is a buffalo, so a buffalo demon was creating some drama. Durga incarnated to kill this demon. And so that festival is celebrated today. It's part of Navaratri, the 9 nights, 10-day festival, 9 nights. And they do Durga Puja during that time. And it's a major festival in East India. It's huge. They make a deity out of clay. When you land in the Kolkata airport and you're leaving the airport, you always see it's all over. It's all over that part of India. But it's especially if you've ever gone to Kolkata, you'll see they're selling deities of Durga made out of clay. Have you ever seen those? They look super tribal and really indigenous. And so they worship those deities, and then they take them to Ganga and they immerse the deity at the end of the festival. Like they call the goddess into the deity and do Navaratri, these 9 days of Durga Puja. And then depending on where you are in India, it's not like all goddesses are made the same. You may be worshipping Durga, you may be worshipping Parvati, you may be worshipping Kali, and the rituals will be specific to the form of the goddess that you worship. It's not just that all goddess worship is made the same, just like all Jesuses aren't made the same. There's a TV show on HBO that I don't recommend you watch. It's called American Gods. And they have a bunch of different Jesuses show up in the show, which was super clever on the part of the directors or the screenwriter, because it's actually true. I was just explaining this to some people, but in the Orthodox Church, the church I was raised in, that I randomly mentioned earlier, they never worship Jesus on a cross, ever. Maybe like there's one church in all of the, and we're talking about a community of hundreds of millions of people. It's the Eastern Church. It's all of Russia, all of Greece, all of the Slavic countries. You follow? It's not a small church. It's a gigumongous church. All of Central Asia. The Christians in that area. They never show Jesus on the cross. Do you ever not see Jesus on the cross in the Catholic Church? They worship Christ in the Passion, bleeding and dying with the wounds on his body, with the stigmata, with the spear piercing his side, with the nails piercing his wrists and his feet. The 5 wounds of Christ. This is the meditation. Totally absent from the Orthodox Church. Jesus conquered death. They don't that he didn't die. Muhammad said Jesus couldn't die. He thought the Christians got it all wrong. He also thought the Trinity was garbage because he thought it made them polytheists because they had 3 gods. So he wasn't convinced of the Trinity. And so he labeled them polytheists and used that justification to persecute them. So there's many different Jesuses. There's many different Devis. There's many different Ram Vijayotsavs. There's different money breads. You know, one of my favorite athletes, his name is Habib Nurmagomedov. He just retired yesterday. It was a very, very big deal. He retired undefeated. First person in the history of mixed martial arts to retire undefeated. No one does that. Muhammad Ali didn't do that. Mike Tyson didn't do that. Nobody does it. Floyd Mayweather did it. That's about it. He also ducked people for a big chunk of his career, so it's not quite the same. But he retired because his mother told him to. His father died, and his mother said retire, so he said, this is my last fight. I gave my word to my mother. I can't go back on my word. He's from Dagestan, a very tiny, teeny wee little country with about the population of Orange County, about 3 million people. Up in the mountains. It's the Caucasus Mountains, the northern Caucasus Mountains. It's you know, it's like a very remote, very ancient civilization. They got ruled by the Romans for a minute, and they got ruled by Persians for a minute, and then they got ruled by Islam for a while, and then eventually Russia took them over. But it's like Afghanistan. It's tough to rule those people because they're up in the mountains, and it's like Scotland also. Scotland is like the bane of the British Empire. You know? Ireland is still under British rule. Scotland isn't. They just couldn't hold it. It was just too much. I don't know how familiar you guys are with geopolitics, but Scotland's its own country. The British just couldn't cope. It's just too remote. They're up in the hills, and they're just always itching for a fight, and they hate for the yoke of a ruler to be over them. Ireland's a little more complicated. Most of Ireland's independent, but Northern Ireland's not. It's still under the British Crown because half the population is Anglican. Same church. If it's in the U.S., it's called Episcopalian, and if it's in England, it's called Anglican. Half the people are Catholics, and half the people are Anglican. Therefore, they're faithful to the crown, and they follow the Church of England, and therefore they don't want to separate. And so Britain's been holding on very tenuously to Northern Ireland for decades now. And not just because they won't give it up, but because half the population is their devotees. And so they have a lot of loyalists there. Do you guys know all this? Anyway, this little country, Dagestan, and half the world champion wrestlers in the world are from this country. If you look at the UFC, there's like a dozen fighters in the UFC from this country. They're just a tough group of people. They're a tough group of people. Like impossibly tough. And they've got this honor system. His mother told him to stop, and so like he said, my mother told me, he's announcing his retirement. He says, my mother told me to stop, and so I gave her my word, and I can't disobey my mother. He's a 32-year-old man, like lightweight champion of the world, undefeated, undisputed lightweight champion of the world. Threw down his gloves and quit because his mother told him to. Because that's their culture. He wears a papaka. He wears a traditional Central Asian headdress from Azerbaijan and and Dagestan. They all wear the same thing. It looks like a blonde afro. And people used to think it was like a joke. It's not a joke. It's the traditional headdress of the warriors in his tribe that they've been wearing for centuries. And so he comes out to battle wearing the traditional garb of his clan to show his to show his faithfulness to his ethnic and cultural tradition. He got into a fight with a very, very famous martial artist named Conor McGregor and defeated him. Like soundly defeated him, destroyed him. It was like the worst defeat of McGregor's career. And then they jumped into the audience and started fighting with his whole team because they insulted Islam prior to the fight. And so afterwards, his whole group started a full-blown fist fight and like got arrested. And afterwards, they were talking to the guys who did this. They were all banned from the UFC for a year. And then Habib said, okay, I'll also not fight for a year. You ban my teammates, now I'm the lightweight champion of the world, I also won't fight. And then they had to release his whole team from the ban, otherwise he wouldn't fight if his teammates were punished. Do you follow? Then he said afterwards, when I go home, my father's going to beat me for this. He told me not to do this. He said, so he's like a 31-year-old man, married with 2 kids, and he's talking about his father beating him when he goes home, and like on live TV, like in front of an international audience of millions of people. Then his father went on TV and said, I invite Conor McGregor, who insulted him. His father he insulted. That's why he got beat up. But he insulted his father, and his father got on international TV and said, I invite Conor McGregor to come to Dagestan. I will personally guarantee his safety. He'll be our guest in our home, in our village. Nothing will happen to him. I do not want to create any more disturbance. It's like a Pashtuni thing. It's like a Pashtunawali thing, which is what led to that American soldier being saved because he was being chased by the Taliban and he wandered into an Afghani village, which was also Muslim, but he wandered into the village. And the moment someone wanders into your village, they become your guest. And now everybody in the village has to be willing to die to protect the person because they're your guest. So he wandered into a Muslim village. An American soldier in Afghanistan wandered into a Muslim village, but they're Pashtun, which is a very old culture, called Pathan in India. You know the Pathans? Pathan, you know? The Punjabis, the northern Indians, same culture. And so the Pashtuns, they received him, and then the Muslims came to kill him, and they all broke out guns and fought and called for support and delivered him unharmed to the U.S. Army. He'd been shot multiple times, and some of those guys died. Some of the people in the village died. And it was just real clear cut. For thousands of years, we've been Pashtunis for thousands of years. We've been Muslims for 1,500 years. You come into our village, no one's going to harm you. It's like a code. So the father essentially made the same promise. You've insulted me, but you can come and I'll personally guarantee your safety. This is the country with the highest rate of terrorism in the world. This is the country with the highest rate of terrorism in the world. Dagestan is worse than Chechnya. It's next door to Chechnya, it's worse. Number 1 and 2 biggest terrorist countries on the planet, not in the Middle East. It's the former USSR. You're from Russia. What are the Dagestanis like? What are the Chechens like? You know? They're tough people. They're tough people. So, culture is a big deal. And we talk about Hinduism and we assume that our version of Hinduism is the only version of Hinduism around. But the truth is that this festival, Ram Vijayotsav, is not Ram Vijayotsav, it's Dashami. It's Vijay Dashami. It's celebrated totally differently depending on your sect of Hinduism. All over the eastern seaboard for hundreds of millions of people, they worship the goddess. Within worshiping the goddess, they worship so many different forms of the goddess. In North India, same 9 days, you listen to Ram Lila. In South India, it's a cultural festival. Not distinctly coming from either one of these things. You travel around India and you celebrate the festival in different places, it looks totally different. Because so many of the people who come to Hare Krishna temples are from North India, then the version we inherited is Ram Vijayotsav. But it's not even the most popular version, what to speak of the only version. Did you follow this? So for North India, where most of you are from, then you hear Ram Katha for 9 days, and then on the 10th day you burn this effigy of Ravan. And then we added to it, we shoot flaming arrows at the effigy and put the things we're struggling with into a piece of paper and throw it in the fire. And we're adding to the ritual. We're adding our own spice to the ritual as we're co-opting it and making it our own. But even within the broad strokes of Ram versus Devi, you get so many different versions. Durga Puja in Bengal, people are sacrificing goats like there's no tomorrow. In other areas of South India, there's no goat sacrifice. They're worshipping Parvati, Uma, Durga, much more kind of prim and proper forms of the goddess, way less radical and subversive and tantric. Bengal, it's heavily influenced by the Tantra. And then they immerse their deity in the Ganga. They destroy their deity. They invoke the deity and they worship the deity. It's a very tantric thing to do. And then you dismiss the deity. We never do that. Sometimes you meet Hare Krishna devotees and they bought some deity that they have sitting on their mantle. I always feel so much pain when I see this. We don't do that. If we get a deity, we worship it every day for the rest of our lives. One of my gurus gave me a deity about 5 years ago. It's like not a light thing. He says, here, I want to give you this. It's like, all right, now I'm in. Like, that's it. Like, every day for the rest of my life, I'm worshiping this deity. And it doesn't mean like worship doesn't mean like you get a little water and a piece of fruit. Like, I gotta spend some time. I had to acquire all the paraphernalia. I have to meditate every day on the deity. I have to bathe the deity. I have to worship the deity. Prepare an offering. It's the whole thing. And that's it. Like that'll be forever. I'll worship that deity till I die. And maybe someday I'll give it to the next generation. Either my children or my disciples. I'll give the deity, and then that worship will carry on. And it'll carry on forever. We have a whole different understanding. That once Krishna powerfully manifests in your life in the form of the deity, then you're sworn to that deity. Like for sure, 100%, if somebody came here and desecrated the temple, for sure, I would give my life to protect the deities. No question. There's no, let them destroy the deities and we'll go get another one. It doesn't work like that. When the Afghanis came to conquer Gokul and Vrindavan and desecrate the temples there, the sadhus rose up and fought them to a standstill, outnumbered 10-1. You can hear accounts from the battle from both sides, and that was the beginning of the that's where they're just like Alexander the Great got stopped in India, the Afghanis, Durrani got stopped. He got stopped there in Gokul, in Vrindavan, because the sadhus there could not tolerate Krishna's temples being desecrated. And so they rose up and they fought valiantly, like men possessed, gave their lives. Thousands and thousands of them died. Descriptions were that there were hundreds of babies in mountains, dead children. Thousands of women jumped into the Yamuna to escape being raped and drown themselves. In South India, you have the deity of Not Venkateshwar. Ranganath, thank you. Venkateshwar is Balaji. You didn't know that? Same deity. Ranganath, a very famous deity in South India. And so, worshipped by the followers of Ramanujacharya. And the Muslims came there. The Muslims got quite far south. The Muslims got there. And they had to escape with the deity. And so the Brahmins simply, hundreds and thousands of Brahmanas, simply stood in front of the temple and refused to allow the Muslims to enter. So the Muslims had to murder them in cold blood and then move their bodies out of the way. And it took some hours, and in that time period they were able to escape and take the deity to another place. They actually built a wall in front of the deity, a faux wall, so that people wouldn't realize they'd think the temple was empty. When they interviewed Habib's teammates, and the one of them was saying, I was very happy to go to jail for this. I'm very happy for the privilege of going to jail, for chastising them. And Habib wrote, he goes, a few men came down from the mountains and wrote the history of our nation and the blood of our enemies. That's what he wrote. They insulted his father, they insulted his religion, and so they went and beat those people in a fair contest. And he wrote, a few boys from the mountains came down, because they're from the mountains, they're proud of it, just like the Scottish are proud. And we wrote the history of our culture in the blood of our enemies. Like it wasn't a joke for them. So, we don't care so much about killing demons. Ram killing Ravan is not that big of a deal for us. Do you know why Ram killing Ravan is not that big of a deal for us? Krishna killing demons is not that big of a deal for us either. Do you know why? Because he's God. And his thought is enough to get rid of any inauspiciousness. Krishna doesn't have to appear in this world to vanquish the miscreants. There's a verse in the Gita where Krishna says, I appear in this world to vanquish the miscreants. All of our commentators say that's not true. Because he's omnipotent. He doesn't require to vanquish any miscreants. Krishna can simply snap his fingers, empower one of his devotees, allow time to do his work. Allow karma to do his work. Krishna has so many unlimited ways. An omnipotent, omniscient being can rule the world. He doesn't have to show up here. Krishna shows up here to give joy to his devotees. Ram came to give joy to his devotees. Killing the demon is an incidental thing that he accomplishes. We don't even worship Krishna killing demons. We don't have deities of Krishna killing demons. We're not even into it. We worship Krishna dancing with his devotees. Think about it. We don't worship Ram killing Ravan. Sometimes I'll have deities of Durga killing Mahishasura. We don't do that. It's Sita and Ram. Lakshmi Narayan, it's Radha and Krishna. They're happy. Everything's accomplished. The leela of killing something is incidental. We're much more interested in the private life of God and the sweet relationship between God and his devotees. We understand that Krishna controls everything by time very, very easily. So when we look at a festival like this, even though for many people in India it's not even Ram, and even amongst the people who's it's Ram, it's really about burning that effigy of Ravan. For us it becomes totally transformed. Ravan simply represents our negative desires and Krishna is going to purify us. You follow? When we say Bahir Nishinga, Hridaye Nishinga. Nishingadev is outside, but he's also in my heart. And so when we say, Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam, Hiranyakashipu's wasp-like body, Tavakada Kamala Vadena Kam, we say that the nails on your hands bifurcate the wasp-like body of Hiranyakashipu. We're really saying, hey Krishna, I have a lot of negative things I'm struggling with, and I'm asking you to please come into my heart and purify me. You follow? We're not into like the blood of our enemies outside of us. We're not into like Krishna killing the demons outside of us. We have faith that Krishna's going to take care of all of that automatically. Therefore, within the strong Vaishnava culture that we're a part of, these festivals become different than what they are for everybody else. And they become an appreciation of Ram, who loved his devotees so much, who chased after and rescued Sita, who was so renounced he gave up a kingdom and humbly lived in the forest. It's about that for us. These beautiful qualities of Ram that make us love Ram, and feel indebted and grateful to Ram, and inspire us in our own lives. We should have something we would be willing to die for. We should be committed to our values. And it should be an irrevocable commitment. When you're young and you're a kid, you don't know what your values are. You got to explore the world to figure out what you stand behind. At some point, you should find your tribe. You should find your clan. You should find your tradition. You should find your theology. You should find your values. And it should be set in stone. Not in a way where you become narrow-minded, but you actually found the truth. And now you get to commit to it. For most people in the world, it's like their nationality, like the Scots or the Dagestanis. And then, for most people in the world, their rituals live in an empty way, like the dirty money bread that my family used to make. And they just become like these funky rituals which have lost all value. But if you're nimble, then you know what to attach yourself to, and you know what to let go of. You let go of the dirty money bread and the Julian calendar, which is obviously off at this point. It's off by a couple of weeks at this point. And you give up fighting for nationalistic concerns, which is that of ego. And, even you look at we wrote the history of our nation and the blood of our enemies. You look at that kind of stuff, and it's like they're really like worshiping kind of an angry, violent God, trying to punish people, and they're worshiping a God who's killing the miscreants and killing the non-believers and the infidels and the heathens, depending on and the goyim, depending on what your tradition is. It's not like the Jewish are free from this either. Their whole religion is about the plagues which were visited upon their enemies. And the walls of Jericho came tumbling down just because they did kirtan in front of them. And God was on their side, smited and smoted their enemies. It's all over the Old Testament. And it's all over Christendom. And it's all over Islam. That's not our thing. We're not into Ravan killing demons, or Ram killing demons, or Devi killing demons. We're into Ram loving his devotees and uplifting them, and everything being taken care of magically. Krishna explains as much when he tells Arjuna, like, Mashucha, don't worry. I will take care of everything. I will liberate you. You just surrender to me. That's it. And so what happens is there's an evolution over time that takes place, and little bells and whistles get added to various festivals, and they get celebrated differently culturally depending on where you are, and they almost look totally different. Even the god of the festival changes. And so those cultural differences take place. We shouldn't get so hung up on that. We should be understanding and evolving spiritually to a place where we're free from fear, free from anxiety, not afraid of letting go, fearless, just like a warrior, but fearless because Krishna holds us close to his breast and suckles us and cares for us and nurtures us, and so we don't have a care in the world, like a child in the arms of their mother and father. And so, depending on your conception of divinity, when you celebrate a festival like this, you'll celebrate it in different ways. And what happens a lot of times is the ritual gets re-envisioned. And so you see that even happening in the Hare Krishna movement. We added the bow and arrow, which is kind of a cool thing. And then we took out the fireworks. There's a lot of fireworks in India. But you see so many people in India, they have a big scar on their hand because they lit off fireworks. Because fireworks are so much more powerful in India, so much more scary in India. And there's no law about it. So a 4-year-old kid can go and buy a stick of dynamite. I think an M80 is 1/12 of a stick of dynamite. And I think an M1000 is a stick of dynamite. I think you can get like M500s in India, like a half a stick of dynamite. The kids are like chucking them around. So many of my friends, they have like big like wounds. You say they're missing a finger. What happened? Oh, Diwali. Everybody's got a big scar from it. Like people have scars from motorcycle accidents and stuff in this country. They have scars from fireworks. So we took that out. We added in the bow and arrow. I haven't seen that so much done traditionally when I went, when I was in India for these festivals. And then we added in this little thing of throwing the paper in the fire. But a lot of what we adopted in this festival is, we got from just because we have so many North Indians in our congregations. And so we just kind of rolled with it. But from a Vaishnava perspective, from our traditional perspective, we may do some ritual, but we just remember Ram and how sweet Ram was, and how Ram took care of Jatayu, and how Ram rescued Sita, and how Ram obeyed the rule of his father, and how Ram obeyed even his own stepmother, and how Ram was renounced. We think about Ram in the forest. We think about serving with Ram in the forest in a very simple, sweet, intimate way. And we think about Krishna in the same way. Whatever festival you throw at us, that's the deity that we're meditating on. It's very different. It's almost like a different deity. Just like the many different versions of Jesus. It's almost like a different deity. And so if you want to understand a tradition, you ask about the nature of the deity they're worshiping. Your deity is something you throw in the Ganga when you're done? Our deity is something we give our life for. We'll worship it for the rest of our life. You're worshiping your deity committing violence? We worship our deity embracing the devotee. The idea of calling your deity in and renouncing your deity, we don't do this. You know mudras? Different hand symbols and stuff like that you do for puja, all the mudras you do. We don't like to do mudras. We learn them, but we don't like to do them. Because when you do mudras, you're ordering the deity, go here, do this. Like when you do the Ankush mudra and you call in the sacred rivers, you're pulling them in and calling them in. You're forcing them in. We don't do that. We don't try to force anything to happen. We pray. So Vaishnavas give up doing mudras because it's antithetical to their approach to divinity. So, I appreciate Habib Nurmagomedov, whose actual name is pronounced Nurmagomedov. But anyway, I appreciate him very much. I love it when I meet somebody who doesn't care about fame, doesn't care about money, just wants to do the right thing, respects their elders, and is willing to die for what they believe in. Even I don't like the tradition that he's a part of that much. I appreciate that integrity that he lives according to his values. I appreciate any group of people who's willing to radically get behind their values and have something they'd be willing to die for. Whether it's jumping on a grenade so their fellow soldiers don't get killed, whether it's heroic compassion and stepping in and putting yourself in harm's way to protect a stranger. There's different kinds of compassion, stranger compassion, and familial compassion, friendly compassion, depending on who the person you're dealing with is. But there's heroic compassion, which for any of those groups of people is when you put yourself in harm's way. I appreciate that. Ram was heroic. I appreciate that. But as soon as you talk about integrity and honor and valor, you got to ask, what are you standing up for? What are your values? What's your tradition? What are you behind? And that's where you can start to make some distinctions between nationalistic concerns or familial concerns or monetary concerns or egotistical concerns or religious concerns. Then within that religious concerns, you can talk about violent notions of divinity versus sweet notions of divinity. Angry gods versus loving gods. And you can start to really sort through it. And then you look at the festivals, and they'll continue to exist. They exist in one of two ways. Either you defang them, where if there's some negativity in that festival, some violence, some anger, some aggression, you just remove it. You defang the serpent. It looks like a serpent, but it's got no fangs in it. And so on a day like today, you follow the ritual, but then you meditate on your sweet Lord. Or sometimes you adjust or jettison the festival altogether, just like we do with mudra, just like we do with so many elements of our tradition which are antithetical to our belief system. And sometimes you start out one way, just kind of copycatting, and then you evolve, and you got to ebb and flow with it. Decide if the money bread ritual or the Julian calendar ritual or ruling another country and considering them a commonwealth or considering your God angry and sending people to hell and smiting and smoting them and writing the blood of your enemies. Like what's actually worth putting your life on the line for? But we should do that math, we should figure that out, and then we should stand behind it and have integrity, and in this way we honor Ram. And I tried to share with you a little bit about my own vision and my tradition's vision of the same festival. It's a defanged serpent. It's not about the killing. It's about the loving, and that killing is a negativity within me, or it can be jettisoned altogether. All right, thoughts? Yeah.
I just wanted to also say today is also the appearance day of Madhvacharya.
Yeah, it's Madhvacharya's appearance day. I made a choice not to talk about it, so you shouldn't. We talk about 8 other things. Let's look our Punjika out and talk about everybody. What else? Yes.
I was the first time I went to India, I was in, I think, somewhere near Haridwar.
That's right.
And
You were there for Dussehra. I remember.
I'm really grateful. Thank you.
For remembering? You're welcome.
I might not. And I'm really grateful for this class because I didn't know our tradition's view.
Nobody knows our tradition. None of you guys know our tradition. That's why I'm explaining it. You've been a devotee your whole life. You ever heard this class before? Do you know all this stuff before? No, nobody knows this stuff. That's why I'm educating you guys. What else? Yes, Prabhu. You're from Gujarat, right? Yeah, they celebrate Dussehra in Gujarat, for sure. Go ahead.
Thank you for the class, and I keep in mind that when I read the Krishna Leela or Bhagavatam, I'll be more focused on the Lord's pastime with the devotees, not more about...
Let me be more clear. Krishnadas Kaviraj, the author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, says Krishna doesn't even kill the demons. Vishnu within Krishna kills the demons. Krishna wouldn't kill a demon. That's how much we want to get you over this point. They actually go that big, and they say that. And then they go even bigger. Sanatana Goswami wrote a book called the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. It's a little bit of the nectar. It's the great nectar of the Bhagavatam. Amrit, it's like, the Bhagavatam is like an ocean. It's like a little bit of the Amrit of the Bhagavatam. In that book, he says Krishna doesn't even kill the demons. Keshi, a horse, who Krishna kills in the Bhagavatam, he doesn't kill Keshi. He saddles Keshi and then rides Keshi like a horse. You follow? Aristasur, another demon that Krishna kills. It's a bull. Krishna doesn't kill Aristasur. He yokes him and uses him for transporting yogurt and dairy products to town to sell in Mathura. Kaliya? Krishna doesn't vanquish Kaliya. He strings the cholis of his wives. He disrobes them and makes a big rope out of their reins, and then drives to Kaliya like a horse, like a ferry boat around the Jamuna with all of his friends and family. They rewrite the Leela with no violence to teach us what to focus on. The Bhagavatam is there. There's value in the Bhagavatam. We start there. We don't finish there. We start with just the basic Leela, we learn it, but we finish with a very refined version of the Leela through the eyes of our acharyas that takes us to a deeper and more sweet space with Krishna. And those rose-colored glasses color our vision of the entire corpus of Krishna Leela and the Mahabharata and Ram Leela and everything else. How's that?
Thank you.
One more? Yes.
This class really made me miss Vrindavan, and it just, as you're speaking about like deity worship, made me think about like the rich Vasus that we came across that really left an impression in my heart, and thinking about like how devoted they were and how they just dedicated their whole lives to deity worship and passed on from generation to generation.
We think of the deity as being like our family member, and that's not an exaggeration. The miracle is that Krishna appeared as the deity. The omnipotent Supreme Lord agreed to become our family member and allow us to care for him the same way we care for our children and our family. The attachment is no less. Would you give your life to protect your child? Of course you would. There's something wrong with you if you wouldn't. It's the most natural thing in the world. It doesn't make you special. It just means you've understood what the deity is. It's your family member. Same way, if you have to die, you give custody of your children to a relative so they can take care of them, so they can grow up. So we also pass on the custody of the deity to the next generation so they can care for them. We love Krishna like that. Krishna loves us back. When Gadadhar Pandit got too old, the deity he worshipped, Gopinath, sat down so that Gadadhar could garland that deity because he was too old to stand up. This deity of Gopinath, Tota Gopinath, that Gadadhar worships, outside of Jagannath Puri, the deity is sitting. Why is it sitting? Because it sat down so the devotee could garland. We're looking for that Krishna. We love Krishna like our family. He loves us back the same way. It's a good combination. Miracle comes from both sides. All right, so look here, Tom. Thank you.